When can thinking small take you to big places? We'll be answering that question in a big way in this episode of Venture Utah. Our first news story is a perfect example of that, and that is Zions Bank Corporation, which of course owns Zions Bank and several other bank brands with 433 commercial banking offices in 11 states. In their recent release of their third quarter earnings report, Zions showed strong growth amid a difficult interest rate environment, but also announced that they will be cutting non-interest related expenses due to their efficiency initiative. These cuts will be to the tune of 5% of its workforce and closing of several branches. The expense reduction was not discussed in the earnings report, but rather in a call with shareholders following the release. As a business owner who banks with Zions, as I'm sure many of our viewers do as well, I was originally concerned about the reduction because typically that implies that not all is well in Zions. The reduction is designed to keep Zions nimble and allow it to adapt to the rapidly changing market needs. Harris Simmons, chairman and CEO of Zions Bank Corporation, said, "Despite the efforts to reduce costs, we'll continue to invest in enabling technologies which will help to ensure our success in an increasingly competitive marketplace." Our second news story is also about thinking small in order to go big. Utah is about to become one of the first homes of personal air vehicles. Neo Aeronautics is working with the Utah Department of Transportation's Division of Aeronautics to test, certify, and eventually implement the company's vehicle called the Crimson S8. These personal air vehicles, or PAVs, are roughly the same physical size as a small sedan, but much, much lighter and only carry one passenger. They are designed to fly 50 feet in the air and at a maximum speed of 50 miles per hour. Neo Aeronautics intends to operate them similar to a taxi service, with costs in a similar range. So my dreams of walking out to my driveway and flying myself to work may have to continue to wait, but for going from place to place around town throughout the day, these PAVs could present a massive disruption to the market. Neo is hoping to have the first flying vehicles out and in use by the end of 2020 and have 1,000 vehicles in 25 cities by 2025. Our last story is that Utah is awesome. Okay, so that's not exactly news, but it is a good reminder. The jobless rate in Utah continues to drop and has dropped another 0.1% to 2.7%, which is well below the range of normal unemployment. What I want to mention today, however, is the other side of this good news. As anyone who has tried hiring lately, you may have noticed that it's remarkably difficult to find quality people. And instead of having half a dozen quality candidates to select from, you may only have one or two. This isn't a bad thing, and is often the catalyst that convinces business owners to offer higher salaries or improve benefits packages in order to attract more talent. And that upward cycle continues to the benefit of everyone. So, we are pleased to have on several fantastic guests today. Our first guest is Gary Michaud with Continental Insurance, a rockstar health insurance agent who does personal insurance, but also does small group health insurance plans. Gary, thank you for being here.
Cameron, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, in terms of personal health insurance and small group plans, what are some of the key differences that you find in those?
Some of the key differences are going to be the personal market, which is the individual insurance. You're going to find that most of the plans are going to be governed by the Affordable Care Act. They're higher deductible plans. Less is available to them. You're also going to find, in some cases, much smaller networks. Also in the individual market, there are actually no PPOs that are available, just HMO plans or EPO plans, which means you need to seek a doctor that is within network or go to a facility that's in network. If you're going to be on the commercial market, obviously you've got to have an employer, and there's got to be at least two people on the plan. Sure. But these plans are going to offer, you're going to find more PPOs in the marketplace. You're going to find a wider variety of different types of plans.
Okay. Okay, so let's actually go into that a little bit. So I know you and I have talked a little bit about, as Robin Hood Studios expands, going into offering health plans to our employees. When you're talking to a small business, how do you get started if you want to look at that? What's the kind of some of the information you need in order to make a decision on whether you're going to do a plan or offer a plan to your employees?
Well, it all starts with a discussion with the owner or the manager of the business to find out, what's important to them. Are they in a type of business where it's important where they retain and attract the best employees? And most businesses do want to do that. So in order to satisfy that, a lot of folks do want to implement a group plan, a small group plan. And the information that we need up front as brokers is to find out who their employees are, a census of their employees. To do a group plan, you do need at least 2 employees, and we have to have at least 2 that'll participate.
Okay, so 2 people participating in the plan.
That's correct.
And that can include the business owner?
It can. It
Okay,
can.
gotcha. So are there minimum requirements, minimum amounts of coverage that the employer has to provide in order to offer the benefit?
No minimum amounts of coverage. However, there are minimum participation limits.
Okay.
In order to develop a group plan for your employees, you do have to have 75% participation of the eligible employees. Now, the term eligible in this case means, does this employee that is choosing not to participate, do they have coverage elsewhere? And if that's the case, they don't count against your eligible account.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. That's a good distinction.
Yeah, they can actually just sign a waiver and say, it's okay, I'm covered somewhere else.
Okay.
And it doesn't hurt.
Gotcha. And so would, as far as eligibility, would that mean, is that like part-time versus full-time?
Another requirement is that they be full-time employees.
Okay.
And the definition for full-time employee when we're talking about benefits like this is 30 hours per week.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, not 40s, but 30.
Apparently, I work double full-time. So, okay.
You're not alone.
I know, we all do, don't we? So the 30 hours a week counts as full-time, even if they're classified as part-time by the company? So if I hire someone that I consider them part-time,
30 hours.
it's still 30 hours
Yep.
is the cutoff. So
30
that's
hours.
very interesting. Okay. So if they work 30 hours or more now, is that averaged? Or is that
It is averaged.
within a period? Okay. So
It is averaged.
that makes sense. Okay, I'm asking
question.
very specific questions
Yeah,
here
it's a great question.
because I'm interested in this particular topic. Okay, so at what stage do you think it's time for a small business to start offering health insurance plans?
Well, I don't know if it can be defined in time.
Okay.
You know, there's some companies that go on for years, 20 years, and never offer benefits to their employees. However, if you want to retain your clients, it's a great benefit to offer them because your health costs these days, your health care costs are so high, and especially without insurance. And having insurance is just so important. And if you as the employer are going to subsidize their plans, it makes it more affordable for them, and you get a happier employee.
That makes sense. So maybe not so much of a timetable as much as when the perspective is there.
Correct.
You'd say, okay, and obviously the money has to be there as well, you know.
Of course, because it is expensive.
Yeah.
It is expensive, but so is rehiring.
so it's
turnover.
rehiring, especially you get the right people and you want to keep them. You need to find a way to keep them.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so probably about the time they've a lot of their startup expenses are taken care of. They've found their footing now. They have multiple employees.
Correct.
They have a nice mix, and that's probably about the time when they're going to be in a position to go for it.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
Now, how does that relationship work with less traditional employees, such as a commission-only salesperson? Are they considered eligible?
They're not. In order to be covered in a group plan, you do have to be an employee. So that would exclude 1099 people.
That makes sense. This is actually a question for an accountant, but commission-only salespersons could be classified could be paid W-2.
They can. They certainly can.
Sure.
Yep.
But if they are 1099, then they would not be eligible.
Correct.
Fair enough. Okay. So do you find, generally speaking, the minimum participation you mentioned, minimum participation from an employer, if they are just doing the minimum, is that still competitive? Is that better for the employees than if they were just sent out to the marketplace?
That's a great question. The marketplace is a new thing that we have to take a look at. There's actually some situations now where if an employer offered a group plan to their employees, it could actually be a disservice to their employees. And let me explain to you why. Because some of these employees, if they're earning $30,000, $40,000 and have a wife and a child at home, they're getting a lot of assistance from the marketplace. And in order to match the premium levels that they're receiving from the marketplace, the employer would have to subsidize their plan substantially by paying a large percentage of their portion. So it's not always this way, but that's something that companies now have to think about where they never did before. And that's usually an analysis that I'll do with the employer before they do offer something to their employees.
That makes a lot of sense. So especially in a case like that, but really in all cases, there's a lot more emphasis lately on wellness. You could call it preventive care. Taking care of yourself, eating healthy, massage, chiropractics, essential oils, CBD oils, all these things that kind of help stop us from needing to go to the doctors in the first place.
Correct.
Is there any way that creating a benefit for employees that could kind of go in conjunction with that?
We are seeing some things starting to come into the small group market. There's some things that have been available for years in the larger group market, some incentives, if you will, for the employers and the employees.
Okay.
If they have a certain level of activity, if they maintain a certain body fat minimum, and things such as that. And now we're seeing some of that carry over into the small market, where they are incentivizing both the employer and the employee for being more fit, if you will.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, because that was one of my questions. It seems like you're coming up against a bit of a fine line here with what you're allowed to I guess require of people in order to give them a better rate. So if as the employer, would I be able to say, okay, employees, if you don't smoke and you stay below a certain body fat percentage, I'll pay 100% of your premiums. If you don't do those things, I'll only pay 75%. Is that appropriate? Is that legal?
That's a great question. I don't know if it is legal or not.
Okay. It's a bit of a curveball.
It is. It certainly is. But behind the scenes, they can certainly encourage their employees to be more fit. For example, we have a carrier right now that will pay money each month to the employee if they are a member of a gym, or if they
nice.
or if they walk at least 7,000 steps a day.
Interesting.
So,
okay, that's really cool.
yeah.
So from definitely from the insurance carrier perspective, there are some things they're able to do.
Yes, certainly.
For, the employer-employee relationship might be a little more complicated, though. Correct. Is that what I'm understanding? Okay,
correct.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's very interesting. And do you find small group rates to be, assuming there's no subsidy on the on the marketplace, a personal plan, if you're kind of comparing apples to apples there, are the rates on small group plans better?
They are.
They are?
They are. It didn't used to be that way several years ago.
Oh, interesting.
Most people always thought that group insurance was less expensive. Well, it was to them, and that's because their employer was subsidizing the rate. But now what we've seen since the Affordable Care Act is, rates went up for, 3 or 4 years at a substantial rate. And what we've seen now is those rates are finally leveling off. But during that transition, we noticed that the small group rates went up at a slower rate than the individual rates.
Interesting.
So now, the per person rate is less expensive on a group plan.
That's fascinating. And any conjectures as to why that might be the case?
No, not really. I think a lot of it just depends on what the losses have been like. What's the loss history on all these groups versus the individual market.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's shift the conversation a little bit. How long have you been doing health insurance?
I've been in the health insurance industry probably 8 years.
Okay, that's a fair amount of time.
It is.
A lot's happened in that time.
Yeah, a lot has changed.
So what made you get into health insurance?
Believe it or not, I spent several years in the property casualty business, and I swore that I'd never get in this business. But then the opportunity arose to go to work for this group that asked me to come in, and it's been a great opportunity. It's just been wonderful. It's more of a personal thing where you're helping your clients. In addition to small group and individual, I work in the Medicare market, and nothing is more satisfying than sitting with someone and knowing that you're helping them save money in the future, because they are going to have insurance claims.
That's awesome.
And we want to make sure that the plans that they're on are their carrier, the carrier that they're with, that their provider does participate.
So you really focus exclusively on health insurance in all its forms.
Absolutely.
Which is enough, I think. Health insurance covers a pretty wide gamut of products.
It is.
in services. Okay, so the Continental Insurance, is
Yes.
that the group you work with?
That's the agency that I work with.
That you work with. Okay,
Correct.
great. So are you, does Continental Insurance, are they a provider or are they, you said a broker?
They're an agency. They're a broker.
Oh, they're a broker.
Correct.
Okay, so you can
Correct.
shop out to different.
Yeah, we're an independent, and we represent most of the major markets here in the state of Utah.
That's awesome. Okay, so if somebody wanted to, if they had questions about small group, would you want them to contact you?
Absolutely.
What is the best way for them to do so?
The best way to do so is to call me,
Okay.
and they can reach me on my mobile or in the office.
It's very old-fashioned. Calling.
Absolutely.
Talking.
There's just not enough of that anymore.
You're supposed to say, "Text me, bro."
No.
That's how it's supposed
No.
to. No, that's great. Okay,
Thumbs are
so
terrible.
we do have your contact information up on the screen now. So
Fantastic.
people should be able to get that. It's been fantastic having you, Gary. Thanks
Great.
for coming
Thanks
on.
for having me. Great to be
Thanks
here.
again. Yeah. All right. So while we wait for Dennis, for our next guest, Dennis Ketterer, to prepare to come on set with me, I'd like to do a quick shout out to Venture Utah. Shameless plug for myself here for what we're doing. If you want to be on the show, we would love to have you come on the show. We'd invite you to go to ventureutah.com, click Become a Guest, and fill out that form. It's not a very intimidating form. It's just a bunch of white boxes, and you just type letters into it. So you fill out that form, we'll be notified, and we will reach out to you as soon as we have an opening that we feel like fits your business very well. It is 100% free to come on the show and to discuss your area of expertise. And just like we just did with Gary, you'll also have an opportunity to talk about how you fit into the mix and how people can contact you to learn more about what you do. Being on Venture Utah can be a great way to get the word out. We also release each segment that we shoot on the show individually the following week, so you'll be able to share that individually as well and post that on your own social media channels. So our next guest is Dennis Ketterer with Botany Bay Oils. Now these aren't essential oils, they're CBD oils. And what's the difference? Well, we're going to ask him. And while we're waiting for him to come on out, I would like to remind you, ventureutah.com, click on Become a Guest, and that will allow you to fill out the form to come on the show. All right, Dennis, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Cameron.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Okay, so you've got some stuff here on the table.
We do.
Are these
These are CBD products and
Okay.
CBD essential oil blends.
Okay.
Because sometimes CBD alone is just not enough.
so CBD oil. What is CBD oil?
Well, CBD is short for cannabidiol.
Cannabidiol.
Yeah, and cannabidiol is the oil. When you take the hemp plant and you extract the oil out, it's the CBD part is called cannabidiol. Now that CBD, depending on the hemp plant, can have too much THC to be legal in Utah. But you don't really want to have a whole lot of THC in your body anyway. Other
Sure.
states, Colorado allows it, California allows it, and it can get you a little high, but it can also cause you to fail a drug test. And there are a lot of jobs where you fail the drug test, you're done.
So you have a very intimate history with this product, do you not?
I do. First of all, I got in the business because of this product. I made it for my wife. I'm a scientist by nature and a meteorologist, and this was some of the chemistry that I thought I'd never use, but did. This is called our Ultra product, and here's the thing about CBD. CBD is good on its own. 500 milligrams for most people will do it, but sometimes people need more. So I put CBD reactive oils into these products. This one in particular has the most of what we do so far. CBD is better taken under the tongue and let it sit there for 60 to 90 seconds and then
Interesting.
swallow. Well, I have people who do that with this, but veggie caps work too.
Veggie
Veggie caps, yeah. Some people need to. This is pretty potent. But why did I make this? My wife has lupus and fibromyalgia.
Oh.
And she was on several of the drugs that we're worried about people with today, and it was a lot. And the reason is this, Cameron. Your body has CBD receptors. We know for sure CBD1 and CBD2. But now there's suspicion that there are several more. Well, the thing is that you need to get both of those receptors active to help reduce pain and just general feel good. Well, my wife was taking all of these other things. She doesn't like me to use the word, and I know she'll see this, so since I want to stay married, I won't. We don't have, however, we have CBD receptors, but what we don't have is aspirin receptors. We don't have ibuprofen receptors. We don't have opioid receptors. What happens is people on opioids, and a lot of folks are going to relate to this, they start taking the opioid and it handles the pain. And then later it's not enough, so they go from 5 milligrams to 7.5 milligrams, and instead of 2 a day, 3 a day. And then what's happening is the pain receptors are getting broader and broader. So then it takes more and more for less and less relief until the point of either addiction or, for some people, that overdose. So what the CBD does is it hits those pain receptors. That's what God put in us for a reason. Big Pharma back in 1937 made marijuana and hemp illegal. They look similar. They're both a cannabis plant, but the cannabis sativa has a much lower THC count. And that's the one that's used legally around the country.
So they're actually two separate plants.
Right, they are.
I had no idea.
And so the thing is that you want the THC count to be less than 3%, 0.3% by volume. And lower than that, it's legal, but it's still detectable. What makes it hard is that you want to get the pain relief, and you don't want to get high. Well, until recently, the CBD oil wasn't available unless it was almost black market. Even here in Utah, there are places that were selling it for 2 or 3 years. State wasn't bothering them until a guy up in Heber, I think it was, died because took a CBD product that had synthetics in it.
Oh.
That's where really cheap CBD comes from. The synthetics can be fatal. You know, we're having trouble with vapes these days. We decided at Botany Bay Oils, no vapes and no roll-ups, which is essentially a hemp joint, but you don't get high off it, but you get 125 milligrams. Well, now see, that's the thing. You want to make sure that you can pass that drug test.
Oh, sure.
Because, you know, if you drive on an opioid, if you drive on THC and you get pulled over, the state's real happy to take $10,000 and some of your time. They get mighty liberal with your time.
I'll bet
they
do.
They'll put you behind bars for a little bit at the Gray Bar Hotel, and you know, there's a lot of problem with that. And you know, it's just grandma trying to avoid her pain driving to. And she may not get the Gray Bar time, but they still get the $10,000 fine. This handles that pain to a point where they can still drive. In my wife's case, she could go to family outings again, enjoy the grandchildren again, and I got my wife back again with our Ultra. And so my son saw that and he said, "Dad, I want to fund the company, let's do this."
Wow.
And so my son's life savings went into this, so we're going to work real hard to make sure he gets
yeah, that's fantastic.
but our product is being used by a lot of folks. One of your employees here, Nichelle, she has a really, it's a neurologic thing where if she just lightly touches her face or her hair does, it's extremely painful. She can press hard and it doesn't hurt. She wasn't getting any sleep. I helped her out with the Plus. And the Plus tastes a little bit like a Christmas tree with orange. So again, some people will use it with the VeggieCap. But what she did is she started taking this, and for the first night in years, she slept through the night.
Wow.
And now I told her last week, why don't you just rub on however hard you have to do it to not hurt, but put that on the top as well, and she got even more pain relief. So that's the kind of thing that happens. And so my wife sponsored our need to get into this business, and it was born out of love and science. Frankly, it took me 14 months to come up with the right formulations and to do it in a way that works.
Which is so cool that you did that yourself.
Well, yeah, with lots, 8 hours, 14 hours a day, sometimes studying and experimenting and you know, putting the formulas together for it. The one I didn't is our pet chew. That's veterinarian formulated, and I have some great stories about that. Folks can call me, and in fact, my son's dogs are both alive now because of that. The one
Wow.
dog was, and I just heard from my daughter-in-law today, because she brought the stuff over. At any rate, she told me that her almost 100-pound, and I don't know the breed, but it's very short hair, it looked like it was going to be checking out. Started giving her, actually she gives her our oil mixed in with one of the chews and some peanut butter, and the dog's walking around and not being aggressive anymore because of her pain. She was getting
Sure.
aggressive. They have a dachshund, and that dachshund, and it's not unusual, they get hip dysplasia, but it's really bad and it's almost paralytic, and sometimes it is. Well, the dog was going down the stairs, had a problem, they had to carry the dog up, and its back legs were paralyzed, couldn't move. So she gave the pet chew. It's 1/2 a chew for every 9.5 pounds of dog. So she gave the dog the half a pet chew. 2 days later, the dog's legs were moving. A week later, walking almost normal, and 3 weeks later, like it never happened. That's the
Wow.
kind of thing that happens with our pet chew. You got a pet with separation anxiety, the pet chew helps.
I'll bet it does. Calms them right down.
The Plus product, it works for a lot of different things, but we have somebody who we sold the Plus product to, who you may have seen on 2020, and I won't mention her name now, but she had PTSD from a husband who murdered his ex-wife and got away with it, kind of, sort of, and was starting to beat on her. She ended up with PTSD, anxiety, and panic attacks. She was taking a CBD oil from another credible source and vaping it as well, and still taking 3 Xanax a day. She doesn't know how soon it was after using our product and not using the other CBD products. She doesn't remember, but it was within a few days that she wasn't taking the Xanax either.
Wow.
Yeah, and her dad, a retired police officer, uses it for why I use it, which is, you know, at my age, you get up and pee in the middle of the night a lot. And I was tired of being tired, and I noticed that was one of the benefits for me. But the real reason that I started using it was that, and I can walk, by the way. I use the wheelchair right now because I'm not supposed to walk a lot, but I have phantom pain. This is a prosthesis, and I won't show skin or anything, but
Oh my goodness.
I would have the feeling of a railroad spike going into my ankle on the side from the outside or on the instep, except I don't have one. And it was excruciating. I mean, this stuff, the phantom pain, they gave me gabapentin, and I'd have rather taken Skittles. At least I had flavor. It didn't work.
Oh, man.
It didn't work. So then they wanted to put me on Lyrica, and I'd read enough about Lyrica. I didn't want that either. But I was having this pain, and this, my Shorty, as I call him, pathetic as he is when he's up and shaking, and because it hurts so badly. So my wife said, why don't you use the CBD? And so I did. Because we had bought another product, and we'll get into that in a minute, but the product had CBD in it at that time, and it helped. It did everything. Well, then we lost our source of where we went to buy retail because we bought 2 bottles that didn't have CBD in it, or if it did, it was so little. And that's a problem. There's a lot, this is a Wild West industry. To trust the product that you get, it's a challenge. So at any rate, when we got ours in, and I'd been having phantom pain, we got ours in 15 minutes, it was gone, where it took an hour with regular CBD.
Wow.
And that's because of the way we blend it. We blend it down in nanometers to the point where it's just barely not water. There's water-soluble CBD out there, gets right in your system real fast, 85% absorbable, but when you go to the bathroom, it goes with it, like any other, like vitamin E, vitamin C. Well, we blended this down and kept it hydrophobic. In other words, it didn't want to mix with water, so it stays in your liver, it stays in your gut, it goes through the blood-brain barrier really well because it's so small, and it's 65% absorbable.
Wow.
So the thing is when you're looking for CBD, whether it's Botany Bay or any other, you want to make sure of the sourcing. We can go back to the farm. We know the Colorado farm that our hemp was grown in. Hemp absorbs everything around it, air, land, and water. So the Chinese plant it around their cities to help reduce the air pollution. And then they harvest it, and then they extract the CBD oil out of it, and they sell it, and it's real cheap. You can bet if you're seeing CBD on a shelf for $20, that it's probably Chinese, or it has some synthetics, or it's made with isolates. Isolates are not as powerful as a full or broad spectrum. And that's one other thing, Cameron. A lot of companies say they have full spectrum, but zero THC. Means zero detectable. Well, they can't. You can't be broad spectrum and have zero detectable full spectrum and have detectable THC. It takes to be full spectrum detectable THC, which means you would fail a drug test. The government, when Trump signed the Farm Bill last year, changed the rules. We are a broad spectrum because we have THC, but we're not full spectrum because it's not detectable. Well, a lot of companies still are saying it's full spectrum because everybody knows that's what you want, except you don't, because and in fact we had this, we were going to full spectrum on our label. And our co-packer said, yeah, I'm not going to co-pack for you if you do that. Well, why? Well, because the law changed. And it's now what was full spectrum a few months ago is now broad spectrum. And so it was really important to know that. So we are a broad spectrum in everything that we have, even our little bath bomb.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Everything works in a synergistic fashion for you, for your body. And,
well, that's fantastic.
Using is believing.
So we're running out of time, but I wanted to real quick just say, ask if people want to get in touch with you to find out if this could be a solution to something that they're facing, what is the best way for them to reach out? Probably through our website, botanybayoils.com. If you want to get through to us through our email directly, it's botanybayoils@gmail.com. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dennis. This has been phenomenal. I think
Thank you, Cameron.
We'll keep these on display here for a little bit while we go through our last segment, just to make sure that people can get a good look at them. All right, so for our last segment today, I wanted to talk about things that have come to my mind and helped me grow as I've worked with Evolve Coaching, and I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction. Again, this is as I was coaching with To Evolve, one of the best things, and as I'm actually still coaching with them, but as I've been coaching with them, one of the things it's done for me is increased my ability to reflect on the things around me and to understand them more, which has made me better at what I do as a marketer. Understanding people and understanding the decisions they make and why they make those decisions is critical to being successful in a marketing sphere. And one of the epiphanies, I guess you could say, I've had recently, as I was comparing demographics, teenagers and students versus mid-20s, late 20s, comparing those demographics and why they have different behaviors, it became clear. And what I'm about to share with you, I could write a book and charge a lot of money to share, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to share it. So the biggest difference between them that fuels much of their decision making, especially in the workplace or in a commercial environment in commerce, is their relationship to authority. Now, if you think about a 17-year-old, every authority in a 17-year-old's life is there for the benefit of that 17-year-old. Teachers, principals, even police officers, and parents increasingly are there to benefit the 17-year-old. They're there to benefit the student. So that relationship is very different from, say, a 25-year-old working in the workplace. Their boss is not there for the benefit of the employee. On the contrary, the employee is there for the benefit to the authority figure. So that is a very important distinction, and it may not seem so at first, but the more you think about the implications of that, it also explains the somewhat cliche and unhelpful criticism of millennials that they're entitled. You hear that a lot. Well, increasingly, parenting and teaching and schooling, we're all doing our absolute best to help these youth grow up to be successful. emphasis is we're focusing on helping them. And so increasingly, a teenager's relationship with their parents is more about the parent helping the child. It's more and more about the parent helping the child. 100 years ago, that was not true. 100 years ago, the children helped the parents. You had kids to help on the farm, so you didn't have to do all the work. And that has shifted. So now parents are primarily helping children as opposed to children helping parents. And that's the relationship with authority that everyone growing up right, not everyone, that's an overgeneralization, but many growing up right now, that's what they're experiencing. Their relationship with authority is there to benefit me. Authority is there to help me, because every authority figure in their life is there to help them. They didn't make this up on their own. They didn't decide this. That's what they've grown up with. That's what they expect, because that's what it's always been. Unfortunately, when you leave school, whether it's after college or high school, depending on when you stop going to school, there's a handoff that needs to take place now, where authority, you have to make a mental switch. Authority is no longer there to benefit me. I am there to benefit authority. And you've got to do that for a while, years. We call that paying your dues. If anybody my age or younger have heard older people say that you've got to pay your dues and it makes you really annoyed, well, this is kind of what they're talking about. This is what they mean by paying your dues. You have to get into a place where you are providing value to an employer. And it's a very one-sided relationship for a while, until for however long it takes for you to prove your value. As you gain experience, as you gain credibility, as your skills mature, as you develop, it becomes clear to your employer that you are indispensable. And when you are valuable enough that they don't want to lose you, that's when the next shift takes place, where you and the authority figure have to work together to make sure it's a mutually beneficial relationship. When millennials are criticized for being entitled, it's often because they are expecting that type of relationship out of the gate. They've been hired for a month, a year, 2 years, and they are expecting that level of regard and teamwork, you could say, from their employers, when they don't realize 2 years is a very short amount of time. You can get a lot better at something in 2 years, but you haven't gotten a lot better at everything in 2 years. You haven't become a truly different person in only 2 years. It takes a long time. It takes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years for you to really come into your own in your career. And as you go more into your own, that's when you're able to make requirements of your employer. Why? Well, frankly, because you have better offers. You have better opportunities that you could pursue. And so you go from all the authority figures in your life helping you. Well, now you have new authority figures. You get out of school, you graduate, and you try to enter the workforce. Your authority figures are not there for your benefit. If you are not benefiting them, they fire you. And sometimes with impunity. You are the bottom of the totem pole. You're the bottom rung on the ladder. If layoffs happen, you're the one who gets axed. The guy who's been there 10 years gets to stay. You go home and you don't have a job. You've got to build that. You've got to prove over time, over consistency, that you will provide irreplaceable value to your employer. And that's how that shift comes back into balance. It is imbalanced when you first get started. It's imbalanced and it sucks. Your employer has all the power and you have very little. It is through that development and proving over and over that you are the guy, that you're the one that they want in the tight spot. That's how that starts to shift and you become more on an even playing field. So that was a long explanation of an epiphany that I had. I hope that helps for those of us who have children in that age group, for those of us who still are children in that age group. It's important to understand that difference and how to address it. So I hope that was valuable, and we will see you next week on Venture Utah.